Yeah, shout out to Ron Arnett. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, sir. Um, but for me, I grew up around 92. I was born in 92, so I got to see Shaq in his heyday when he was with the Magic. Um, Unfortunately, he ran into the same problems Sir Charles Barkley ran into, right? Um, he couldn't get over Michael Jordan. Even when Michael Jordan left, he still couldn't get over Michael. He still couldn't get over the hump. Um, but for me, I always thought Charles Barkley was vastly underrated player. Um, I believe Charles Barkley had a lot of things going for him because of his size. He moved well as a big man. You know, not a lot of people want to give him that credit. He's won MVP, which obviously Shaq won. But the one thing he never got in his career was championships. Now, you could say, well, that was probably, the front office not really giving him that much of an opportunity or didn't really put pieces around him to succeed. Or you could say the same thing with Shaq when he was with Penny Hardaway and 3D, Dennis Sky, and Anderson, they had a pretty good core there. I mean, they had a pretty good core over there as well. And I think the Magic was an expansion team, I believe. So they was coming up, in their own right as well, But for me, I always liked the Charles Barkley game, because he didn't really have a one go-to move. You know what I'm saying? Like, he lasted longer. I think he played from 1987 to 2003, I believe, or four. And then obviously, he called it quits. He tried to team up with Hakeem Olajuwon and Scottie Pippen, and obviously that didn't work. So he was just, chasing the ring anywhere he could. And I don't blame him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously he went from the Philadelphia to the Suns. You know what I'm saying? So he went to different organizations, and they tried their best to, build around him. But obviously, the competition at the time was just too fierce. Even when Michael Jordan retired and went to golf, there was still the NBA at the time was still a very competitive atmosphere. Now, when you put Shaq's accolades against Charles Barkley's accolades, of course, the rings help. The rings help. The MVPs both have won. You know what I'm saying? But overall, I would think just the eye test tells you that Charles Barkley was 10 times better than Shaq. I mean, there's really nothing you can't tell me that, you can't tell me that Shaq wasn't a good player. I'm not saying that he wasn't a great player, he just wasn't a consistent good player, Like, he never worked on his craft like he should. He never developed a jump shot that he can rely on. Like, you can't tell me that Charles Barkley was an underachiever, because he did achieve. He did achieve his goals. His goals was to make it to the NBA. He did that. Now, yes, he didn't win a championship, but that was not really on him. I solely blame that on the organization, or the organization that drafted Philly. Now, Shaq, on the other hand, he took the easy way out. Obviously, Orlando Magic wasn't going to pay him all that money. They said, okay, fine, it is what it is. He dipped, he left. LA came and scooped him up. And then obviously he won 3 rings from that, actually 4 rings, one with Miami. And then after that, he just bounced from team to team to team, and he was just an afterthought. You know, his game, he couldn't really do the same things that he did when he was with the Orlando Magic or with the Lakers. You know, he couldn't really dominate the way he did because in the long run, it gave back on him. You know, he didn't have a reliable jump shot that he can, you know, okay, like this backing down to the basket thing gets old and everything is getting bigger and faster and stronger, and you know, like he wasn't thinking about that. You know, he just think that, you know, I could just, you know, dominate you with my force and power, and that diminished quick. You know, now Charles Barkley, he was still doing the same exact thing when he was with different teams. You know, he had a better mid-range. He could finish around the basket. He was a better free throw shooter than Shaq. He had a better field goal percentage than Shaq. The only thing he was missing was championships. And I hate Shaq because Shaq is one of those happy-go-lucky type of people. You know, like he'll say one good thing 1 minute and then he'll bash you the next. You know, like he's not persuasive in his words. I mean, half of the time I don't even know what he be talking about. It sounds like he has a freaking hairball stuck down his throat. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you've been to a few Diddy or Trump parties back in the day. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, this is not a bashing video. I just believe that Charles Barkley was a better player. Unfortunately, Shaq just was on good teams outside of Orlando. Obviously, he couldn't get over the hump. And then obviously he squeezed one last championship in Miami. I mean, that Miami team was already stacked, you know. So he didn't really have to do too much or so much. You know, obviously I still got that 2K6 cover. Yeah, I think that was the first NBA game I had was 2K6 with him on the cover. But other than that, you know, like, tell me what Charles Barkley couldn't do on the court. He was a good 3-point shooter. That's something that Shaq tried to do, but obviously, you know, he was never going to be that type of guy. You know, and I remember Larry Brown, the coach of the 76ers, told him, like, Shaq, like, you're good, you're dominant, but you have to have something to fall back on when that strength is no longer there. Because when you age, because I think he was like, 36 when he was with Boston or something like that, so he just didn't have it anymore, and he physically and mentally collapsed. Not really collapsed, but he just didn't have that, and I think that grew with him as he got older. You know, like he thought like nobody can, you know, match me strength for strength, and he thought that he could just bully his way to the paint, and it actually caught up with him. You know, he couldn't do the things that he did in his heyday. But if you look at Charles, he looked like he was playing the same way he played when he got drafted by the Sixers. He still had his mid range. He was still efficient in the paint. He still had a field. He still had a very good field goal percentage. He was a better free throw shooter than like. He just didn't have the opportunities that Shaq had. You know, it's not like he could have gone to a championship team and just say, you know what, at least I won one championship. So, I mean, that's like him going to the Bulls. Now, if him, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman all teamed up, I don't know how many championships they would have won, you know. Or you could say, what if the roles were reversed? What if, you know, hypothetically, I don't want to do the hypotheticals, but what if Kobe and Charles Barkley actually teamed up? How many championships they would have won? You know, or what if, you know, Charles Barkley was the first overall pick, and he had the same exact career as Shaq. You know what I'm saying? Because I think him and Charles Barkley got along very well. You know, I didn't see it through. I didn't see it through Shaq. You know, I mean, they spent 13 years. Well, not 13 years, but 13 years of friendship. You know what I'm saying? But I just didn't see it. You know, I don't know what went wrong with the Lakers when they, you know, repeated or tried to repeat. I don't know what went wrong. You know, there was a lot of speculations that Shaq didn't like the way Kobe was keeping nagging on him and of getting, you know, in shape. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, Kobe was right. You know, after he left, you know, the Lakers, he squeezed one more championship, and he was an afterthought. You know, he was coming off the bench. He was not being starting. You know, he just jumped from team to team to team, collecting checks like a welfare, like a single mother on welfare. But let me know what y'all think. I'll put the link in the description box down below. But to me, Charles Barkley was not even. It was not even close. Charles Barkley was better than Shaq. It was not even close.